Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to an episode of Expedition Networking. I have a great pair on here today. Actually, I was thinking through how I met them, and it's a worldwide story of one person in the United States introduced me to another, and then to another, and then it goes to north of England, and then it goes all over the place. It ended up in Estonia, and Marilise Var I had on. I have to look up the episode. But at any rate, she introduced me to somebody in Pensacola, Florida. We're back to the United States, who's connected me with somebody in Australia, Sydney, Australia, if I'm correct, right? So I have the Michelles on here. This is the Michelle episode. I've got Michelle B. Griffin, otherwise known as Michelle 1, and Michelle J. Raymond, otherwise known as Michelle number 2, on here today. And I've pretty much just spent the last 45 minutes talking to them about their story. So I want to bring the story to the podcast. Welcome. So,
thank you, Frank, from Michelle 1, otherwise one part of Michelle Squared.
Okay.
And g'day from the other half. So Michelle J. Raymond here in Sydney.
Well, the beautiful thing is that Michelle too, you have an accent. So sometimes you listen to interviews and it's like, who said that? I think we'll pretty much know. I got the guy voice, right? Michelle 1 has the American female voice, and you have the
Australian.
Australian.
Yeah, there you go.
G'day, mate.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. How'd you guys meet?
Oh, that's such
Michelle
a great
1?
story. The ultimate networking tool, LinkedIn. Would you believe we met in a comment? Also on a post from an Australian that we both knew. And so I think we followed each other, and then we DM'd each other, and then we said, let's get on a Zoom. And it was like 5 days before Christmas. And we spent 2.5 hours on that Zoom call. 2.5 hours. Can you imagine meeting someone randomly in a comment, liking him enough to say, let's get on a Zoom call, and then hitting it off for 2.5 hours? By that time I was starving to death, but I loved it. And that was over 2 years ago, Frank, 2+ years ago. Now, Michelle will probably tell you something different that I left out, but it has just been the ultimate global networking experience. So Michelle, what did I leave out?
I don't think you left anything out, but we would say that 2.5 hour call is probably the shortest call that we've ever had. And from there, what did we do? Like, we've done everything. We've got a podcast that's been running for over 12 months. We've written a book together, all these kind of things that have come out of our collaboration that, again, we've never met each other. I'm now very familiar with all the time zones in the US. I can speak in, non-metric terms. So I've learned so much. But yeah, the power of a comment, which, comes from, if we take a step back, me being known for one thing, which was company pages at that time. So I stood out in those comments as somebody that probably took the contrarian point of view in that particular post, which is why Michelle jumped onto it. So yeah, it's just such an amazing story about how it started there and where it's ended up and where it's going even more so is just incredible.
Yeah. I like to think that your Michelle Squared literally goes 24 hours a day, right?
It does. Yeah. She's in the future, but we even have a website called michellesquared.com, right? That's where we're taking it. And, years ago, I remember I thought of that name and I'm like, I just need another friend named Michelle to make Michelle Squared come into existence. So it did happen. And the first thing we did together, I remember that, was that I hired her as a company page expert to give a training to one of my clients who had actually been referred to. And he really needed, help and training on his company page. And so that was the first how networking really just collaborated with us. And then we just, there's not a day that probably goes by. Maybe there's a few, but it's very rare that we don't WhatsApp each other. Okay.
Right.
So if I don't hear from Michelle, I'm like, oh my God, is she okay? Is she okay? So that's the power of networking, and then just striking a commonality. And it's just transformative.
Do you guys remember what the post was about or the comment was about?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Okay.
Yes, anti-company pages. So it was another LinkedIn trainer based here in Sydney who was completely anti-company pages that I used to do some other LinkedIn lives and things with. And I was like, no, you've got to look at it from this point of view. You can't just be, have your blinkers on and ignore this whole part of LinkedIn. And so I was pretty strong-minded about that whole thing. And at the time, 2 years ago, no one else was talking about that. And so it stood out because everybody else was like, agree. And then there was me going, no. And so, yeah, that's why Michelle just kind of reached out. But I remember that was the post because at the time, everywhere that I was commenting, it just stood out. And I think that's the power of branding, is that you attract the right kinds of people. And yeah, forever grateful. I wouldn't be where I am now without Michelle. And yeah, thankfully, WhatsApp doesn't charge us per message because we'd be broke.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I mean, we've connected other people through us. We've just expanded together our network too, our businesses, our network, our friendship. I mean, I just can't tell you, she's my go-to. She helps me sell better, right? And I help her with branding, and we're each other's sounding board too, because, when you're doing your own consulting work and stuff, you want to help your clients, but then you get trapped in your own brain. So you need someone to help you. We call each other power partners. I coined that term as part of my branding framework. We all need power partners, and Michelle certainly is my ultimate power partner.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I couldn't be more thankful that I found her.
I was telling somebody earlier today, which they were just talking about, the power of teams working together. And I said, I remember as a kid going door to door and selling candy or whatever for the Boy Scouts or whatever it was. I don't know. We all got caught up in that. And it was so much easier doing with a friend. To go do it by yourself was demoralizing. And so to be able to find somebody, I mean, really, there's something, it inspires courage amongst,
Absolutely.
Now, do you guys, I know, well, you guys wrote a book, the LinkedIn branding book, The Power of Two, build your personal and business brand on LinkedIn for exponential growth. So this book's out, it's a pink book. It's on LinkedIn. It was sent to me by Marilise. I send her books. You know what I do? I buy them and I mail them. So it's like $20 to mail them there. This was just sent from Amazon. I didn't realize you could do that. I don't know. So I learned something. But anyhow, what I'm getting at is I know you have the book together, but do you have joint lives? You have separate lives professionally as well? Or is it all kind of commingled now?
No, it's completely separate. So we have our separate businesses that go down two completely different paths. And I think those strengths is what, when we come together, is what allows us to kind of bring to our community even more powerful impact for results. And so for me personally, I think it's just been that crossover. I come from 20 years in B2B sales. Michelle comes from 20 years in PR, marketing, comms, like that kind of space. And we are just coming at things from so different, but at the same time, we started our businesses at the same time. I was really, challenged because I went from managing a team of 30 people, really busy. I'm an extrovert. I love people. I love being surrounded by people, to all of a sudden I'm working from home alone by myself. And I set my business up in March 2020, which is COVID peak times. And we went into lockdown here in Australia. So if it wasn't for the networking and meeting Michelle at that time, I'd already established the biggest risk to my business not working out was not my knowledge, was not that I didn't know what I was doing or didn't have a good idea. It was that I would get lonely. And so meeting people like Michelle and, Marilise and all kinds of people all over the world literally saved my business so that I can thrive now. So the parts in the middle, I think we just love because we get to bounce off each other and bring the best out in each other. And we can have a bigger impact together, Michelle. That's ultimately what we're trying to do, is have a bigger impact, and we can do that easier together.
Did the COVID pandemic, the lockdown, did that spur your businesses along? I mean, I mean, there were people who they were let go. I'm talking to a guy I know. I started a handyman business. I got laid off and I just started doing this. And was that kind of the story as to how, Michelle, too, you got going, or we just made a decision you were going to start a business?
No, so I'm what's called the accidental entrepreneur, which we talk about it in the book, because I'd never planned to be an entrepreneur. I never planned to have my own business. March 2020, I was actually managing a manufacturing company that made hand sanitizer. So you can imagine it was a gold rush, right?
Yeah.
And I'd literally just won a $2 million piece of business off LinkedIn from a post to manufacture hand sanitizer. Except the person I work for decided to renege on that deal and it all blew up and I quit on the spot. And I woke up the next day and I went, I'm never working for anybody else ever again. And so that took me about 6 months to work out what I wanted to do. So I'm the accidental entrepreneur who my business thrived because everybody jumped onto LinkedIn. But Michelle's the complete and utter opposite of how her business started at the same time. So I don't know if you want to share that, Michelle.
Yeah, we talk about it in the book. She was the accidental entrepreneur and I was the delayed but deliberate entrepreneur, because my first job in my consultancy was February 1st, 2020. I had dreamed about it, waited, delayed. It's a long, long story. I finally put in my notice to leave and start my own thing. And my last day was January 31st, 2020. Like no one saw that coming. So yes, that's, freaked me out. I had planned to take a bit of a sabbatical anyway. So I really didn't probably get going till like May or June. I was still finishing up some smaller side consulting, what I always did anyway. But I didn't let COVID stop me. After we all got over the initial shock, you pivot, you figure it out. And, I just started my business. But as Michelle said, no one really knows what you're doing. When you have friends that work in corporate or jobs, they don't get it, so you needed to have a network of people. And being in COVID times, I'm just thankful that we met because, we hopped on LinkedIn and we found each other and, it was just serendipity how we did. And I'm so thankful, but she has just really just been my force to, help prop me up on the days you're like, I don't know about this, but we've grown together and I just celebrated my 3rd year in business. So, and I'm really excited. This year is going to just be even more successful, I think, because I'm really clear in where I want to go. And she's helped me she helps me not get off track too, because I'm one of those people, I want to help everyone, Frank. It's like, oh, you want here? Nope. I got to stay in my lane. Even though I tell her to do it, she helps me. But I know now, and with her support and just the growing client list I have, I'm just very thankful and looking forward to year 3 in business. So that is the story I had. And I think together, being accidental and one delayed, but deliberate, we both bounced back and thriving.
So what's on the future? What's on the horizon? Year 3.
Okay. So year 3, I'm writing, Marlise is actually helping me. She's my accountability partner. I am actually going to do a solo book on my branding framework. Actually, since I was a little girl, I've always wanted to write books. I used to write handwrite little books. And I told Michelle last year, I believe, I'm like, I really always want to write a book, right? Because another thing in my branding work, I like to be the guinea pig. When I help my clients do things, I always like to say, well, I've tried this, I've done this, and they, make sense. So a solo book is what I'm doing. And then ramping up more speaking and bringing my second podcast back. And then I recently just pivoted back to consulting work versus coaching. So I'm in my happy lane as we speak doing that. So Michelle, you've got some big goals in 2023. What do you got? What do you have on the list?
Just world domination, Michelle. Like that's
there
all.
you go.
Like something small.
Come to the US. That's what we want to see.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, look, for me, like Michelle, like we've grown and evolved, and that's been in general. And so for me, I'm really clear around what I want to do. And so I wrote a book in my first year of having my business. So specifically on company pages, which was another cool LinkedIn worldwide story. So how cool is this? I write a comment, which gets noticed. So the guy was in Vienna. Somebody in Dubai who had a podcast saw that comment, invited me on. I go onto the podcast. Someone in New Zealand listens to that podcast and then reaches out to me here in Sydney and says, do you want to write a book on company pages? No one else has done it. And I was like, okay, I've never written a book. And so we did that, which was really amazing as an opportunity and cemented my space. So when Michelle wanted to write a book, I was like, well, we could do one together and I'll show you what I've learned. And then you can go off and do your own one as an extension. And so, we wrote this book together last year, but for me, it's all about, I've written the books now. It's time to get back on track and start to do some selling and training other people, because that's what I'm passionate about. So too many people spam people on LinkedIn instead of sell in a really nice way that doesn't feel like selling. And so I'm out to teach all the B2B marketers and business owners out there how to do it without, the whole connect and pitch. And then Michelle and I are going to have like other things that we want to do together to extend on the book and the podcast that we do together. So I think there'll always be an element of that, because I don't know, you know what it's like, Frank, bouncing off someone else, it just brings like a whole other level of energy, which you don't get working from home. So that's why I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Michelle One had made the comment, and she's disappeared for a second here. The wonder of the internet, and the bane of the internet. God, I lost my train of thought there. No, just working together and having that sounding board. We talked about just kind of the courage, and it's just nice to have those people out there that you can turn to and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. But you're stuck in your own, you can't see the water you're swimming in, right?
If you think you can set up a business and go it alone, like, it was the biggest humbling moment for me. Even though I'd been running somebody else's business, I was responsible for it. And everything that happened in that business, doing it for myself was a completely and utterly different experience for me. And all of a sudden I realized that it wasn't just knowledge you needed. It was also having a community and a network. Right. And whilst I couldn't get out and meet them, because again, we're in lockdown here in Sydney for almost 12 months, for me, that online community just became so important. And establishing, friendships, and because when you start up a business, you don't have money to just go and pay all the experts in the world, even though you would dream about it. Right. You need help, but it's just not feasible. So, what Michelle and I have almost established is this bartering system where I've got complementary skills. So I say to her, look, I'll help you learn, teach you how to sell your business and services. And then can you help me with this branding piece? Because I've been ignoring my website for 2 years and I don't know what to do. And you've got that experience. And so we've been really fair and even around that and bounce back. And I couldn't have what I have now without that collaboration. Yeah. And so we've both got, collaboration partners all over the world. And, like I said, we don't even blink that they're not anywhere near us locally. And I think that's just incredible. And I think that's the blessing of COVID, if there is an upside, is that all the geography, all those walls came down. And now we're all best friends around the world. And I think that's just incredible.
I joke that there are two things that Zoom can't solve for being online. Most people use Zoom. Two things. One, time. I mean, there's just times of the day that you guys are not talking. Right? Because somebody's in bed or should be in bed. And the second thing it doesn't solve is I have no idea how tall people are. That's when I run into somebody that I have met or I've done a lot of this on, and I find out they're 5'2" or, 6'2". I'm just totally amazed, because it's this, the upper torso is all we see.
That's a good point. I actually, about a month ago, I met one of my LinkedIn connections in person. She actually works at a company here and was here in business, and we met. And I was just loving it for a week after. I was just glowing because it was so phenomenal and it was a little odd, but in a great way, that it's like, you met this person in a million years you would have never met had you not met on LinkedIn. She was absolutely lovely, and she's going to be back in April, and I look forward to meeting her again. And so when you connect with someone online for the first time and you get to know them and then you meet them in real life, it's actually reverse. It's really weird, but it's incredibly uplifting. And until I can meet Michelle in person, I'm going to be counting those days. I'm hoping it'll happen in 2023, but that's going to be a really weird moment in a good way, Michelle, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And I had the pleasure of meeting someone that's one of my connections that's, currently living in San Fran, and she came out here. And what I loved is our relationship on LinkedIn is so authentic, genuine, and real that when it became face to face, besides that whole heights, kind of weirdness, you kind of like, oh, is that what you kind of walk like, talk, but when we met, it was like, nothing different. It was like my best friend, just all of a sudden we were face to face. There was no difference. And we just picked up like we were best friends. And I think when you're authentically networking online and your brand is built on authentic behaviors and not just, come and make $1 billion before breakfast, have an ice bath, and my VA will do all the work for me. When you're not that kind of person and you're just genuine, when you meet people offline, it is just takes it to the next level. And it's like, you don't even skip a beat. And I think that's the power of it, and I hope we get to do more face-to-face. That's for sure. I'm certainly working on that plan to get to the US, but I think the authenticity has to be a part of what you do. Otherwise people are meeting going, what the, something's not marrying up here. So
yeah. Well,
Michelle I was going to say, Michelle is a great name for that. It's called your digital twin. Like my thing is you should be as totally online as you are off. And Michelle coined the term digital twin. So
I like that.
Isn't that a great name?
Yeah, I do like that.
Yeah, because what happened was all of my clients that I would start working with, they'd come and they'd like, I hate LinkedIn. And I was like, okay, I think it's the best place in the world, but why do you hate it? And it's because they were trying to be a LinkedIn version of themselves. And it's exhausting trying to be something that you're not naturally and putting up a facade. And I was like, no, we need to push that aside. There's only one of you. And I think that's the lesson that I always learn from Michelle, is that there's only one of us. And that's what makes us unique. So stop trying to cover that and pretend you're like a LinkedIn trainer because they're popular, or someone else that's got, lots of followers. That drives us both crazy. And that's why everything we do is to give other people a voice so that they feel confident that they can be themselves online. And, that is all that they need to be. They don't need to try and be anything else. And so that's what we're definitely on a mission to do globally.
Well, I think there's a huge market for that because there are so many people that are anything but themselves. Oh my gosh, it's daily. I got an email today or a LinkedIn request from somebody. Hey, I see you have a podcast. I would love to connect. It was a private message. Okay, great. We'll connect. Obviously, he's looked at my profile somewhat to see I've got a podcast. So we connect, and then I get a message back right away. Hey, have you ever thought about having a podcast? I'm like, wait a minute. So I know there's something not going on.
There's a disconnect there. Yeah.
When automation goes wrong, that's what that is. When people are trying to automate relationships, which I'm sure, Frank, it must really press your buttons the same as it does us. That they go, oh, wow, I've got this lead gen automation tool. Look, I can pay $40 a month and I can send 200 billion messages on LinkedIn. And I'm like, why would you want to? And I'm sure you see that or have an opinion on it, Frank. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But for us, we're like,
ruins the brand.
Deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah. I mean, people say, how has LinkedIn changed networking? How has it changed relationships? And my simple answer is a question. Where do babies come from? That hasn't changed, has it? Babies still come from the same damn place. Relationships are relationships, and all digital tools, phone, all this stuff, all it does is just helps us communicate further and farther. Yeah, that's it. But the relationship's all the same.
Yeah.
We come across people and all of a sudden they're, obsessed with trying to get so many new connections. And both Michelle and I are like, slow down. Like if you were to go to a networking event, you're not going to go and throw out a business card to 700 people, at the event. You're going to connect and click with certain people. And most likely that will lead to opportunities, whether it's speaking, whether it's business, whether it's just to collaborate. But there's this, all of a sudden, this number that the bigger the number, the better the opportunities. And it's just not right. It's that whole burning relationships, Michelle, like that is the one thing, if we could stamp out, I think we would be like, stop burning relationships, stop wrecking your brand.
No, we're all about authentic communication, connection, and brand building, because that's what, I mean, it's a slow game, just like building your brand and building your business. It's not a one-off, it's a journey, right? It's a journey that just keeps evolving. And if you listen to our LinkedIn Branding Show podcast, we're always preaching that. Sometimes we have gritty episodes where we get really gritty on a subject because we do have hearts of gold, but then we love to call out things and just say, hey, have you thought about this? We actually pride ourselves on being like hearts of gold, but also the friends that'll say, have you thought about this? Because there's a lot of bad advice out there. And then some people, especially on LinkedIn, they follow it to a T, and then they're nowhere where they want to be, or they're not making really good connections. So we try to bring out the good and the not so good. The non-cliche is how we say it.
Every once in a while, I will try and reasoned with somebody. I mean, I'll get through to them, and essentially what you're doing isn't going to work, and this is why. And just see kind of the look on their face, like, well, what should I be doing? Okay, now we can talk, right? But some people don't want to hear it, right? No. LinkedIn's for business. This friend stuff is for suckers. It's like, all right.
Yeah. You can't change it all the time.
And the thing is, as someone that has worked in B2B sales, like I've been a forward-facing account manager out visiting people, and the time that I would spend with people was not on, hey, buy my stuff. It was, I don't know, how did your football team go? Are your kids at school? Like, how's the weather? Are you going on holidays? How was your holiday? It was all that kind of chit chat that made you relatable. And people want to rush that and skip over it. And they're so focused on the short term that, whether you're looking at brand building or relationship building, that's long term. It doesn't happen overnight. And if it does, it's normally something that is easily, as Mary Poppins, easily made, easily broken. That's what happens. And we're just like, people just slow down. Like, it's okay. Even if you want business and you need business, you're not going to get it by just spamming a billion people on the platforms. So we're pretty adamant about some things that we talk about. Normally, we're not quite so prescriptive in anything because we want people to stop and think, like, why are the Michelles saying this? They have different opinions, but also I've read someone else's. Now, I want you to stop and go, yep, that works for me, or that doesn't work for me. Not just follow it blindly, and
trust your gut and use humanistic, evidence. But most of the thing, people just are blind leading the blind. So we're like, you have the answers inside. Stop. Even if you have to get off LinkedIn for a few days to just clear your brain, just use your best judgment. And that's what we want people to think, because there's a lot of cliche advice out there. And that just gets us going. You should have heard us on our LinkedIn Live episode yesterday, right? We just love it. But people thank us for it. And that's why we're here, because they know we have the best intentions, and we just want to connect people and just help people stand out and rise up in their industries to make a greater good and better impact. So I couldn't be more thankful that I found someone, a partner in crime, a partner in good crime, right? So Michelle is the one. And one of the things we really are wanting to do in the coming years, as soon as she can get here, is have an in-person networking thing with our Michelle Squared community. We think that would be the next, one of the most important ways to really build networking and connections. And so I'm putting that out there in the world. Michelle, it's up to you to come here to make it happen.
I was going to ask Frank for his advice on what makes a great networking event like that. I mean, this is your space. You're the guru in this space. Like, what do you think sets up an event like that for success?
Oh, well, I can only speak for myself, but I like to go to events where I can meet interesting people who are genuine. I don't need to be in Vegas. I don't need any of those trappings. I don't care about the wine. I don't care, I don't say I care about those things, but they're not important. If you say, hey, there's going to be great people, but it's going to be bottled water, fine. I'm all in,
I love it.
So, I guess to wrap up here, how do we get a hold of you? How do people get a hold of you? Best way to get a hold of you. Michelle B. Griffin.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, you can go to my website, Michelle B as in brand, Griffin.com. I have all kind of resources, links to my community, all kind of good things. And then I'll let you know about Michelle Squared as with a D, michellesquared.com is where we have Michelle and I's community, our podcast, our book, and all the things. So collectively, Michelle Squared, and then Michelle will tell you how to get in touch with her.
Please.
Look, and of course, always come and find us on LinkedIn. So Michelle J. Raymond, the J is there, so you can find me in amongst the other 30,000 Michelle Raymonds, and that's why it's Michelle B. Griffin as well. But I have a website called LinkedIn for B2Bgrowth.com. So just jump on there. Same as Michelle, all of my resources are there. And yeah, please, if you're listening to this podcast, reach out, let us know that you listened and what you enjoyed, and connect with us, because yeah, we'd love to expand our networks. And thanks, Frank, so much for having us on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Frank. This has been a blast.
Well, we need to thank Marlies. That's who we need
Thank
to
you,
thank.
Marlies. Thank you
Yeah.
if you're listening. We appreciate it.
All right. You guys have a great day or
All
evening,
right.
whatever it is. We're in part of the world.
Thank you, Frank. We will.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.